Alright, good evening folks, it's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to another short war summary. And today we have some pretty big news coming out of Ukraine. However, we have nothing really major going on today, but it is big news nonetheless, and we have that here ready to cover for you in the video. So let's go ahead and jump right into our first piece of news for the day, which is a post from OSINT Defender. And it says Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia have reportedly decided on emergency measures that would be put in place in case of a critical incident in the region were to occur. And these measures include a full closure of the country's borders with Belarus and Russia, as well as the deployment of additional military forces to the border regions. And one thing we don't get in this post here is exactly what is defined as a critical incident, and I think that was noted by OSINT Defender as well in a subsequent post. We don't know what that means. We can assume that means that Wagner tries to cross the border, or they try to sneak in mass through the migrant border crossings. That's two possibilities. But we see here that all the Baltic states have come together to create a plan, basically their own form of a miniature version of NATO in their own right, to be able to respond to a big incident if it were to occur. It's good to see that they're all coming together and basically coordinating with each other, because obviously strength comes in numbers, and I think this is a good preparation. And also, we learn here in our next post that Poland has asked Belarus to immediately expel the Wagner group, and that kind of ties right back into the Baltic states there, creating a contingency plan in case Wagner were to cross the border. We see Poland here demanding that the Wagner group get out of Belarus. And I have a feeling that won't be a completely unreasonable request here shortly, because I think Russia also wants Wagner to get out of Belarus as well, and we'll get into that in just a moment. But we see here in the subsequent post that Poland's interior minister warned that Poland will retaliate if Wagner causes an incident against it or on its border with Lithuania. And like this guy said as well, it's unclear what a critical incident means. But I think we can kind of assume what that does mean. And it says here the most likely retaliation could be a complete closure of Poland and the Baltic states' borders with Belarus. And in my opinion, that would be the first option they take, which is closing the borders. And the second option would obviously be deploying more forces to the border to take military action. Now, we're not looking at a situation here where Belarus ever gets invaded by Poland or any of the Baltic states. That is simply not in the picture. But there will be some protection going on at the border itself to make sure these people cannot cross over. So, moving on to our next post here, we have a post from Clash Report, and it's about the Wagner PMC, kind of tying back into what we were just mentioning a moment ago. It says the Russian State Duma Deputy on Wagner PMC says Wagner will cease to exist, and the terrorists will either be able to go into civilian life or sign a contract with the Russian MOD, and he says this is an illegal armed formation. Big statement by this guy right here. Once again, Russia cannot keep their lies straight. We were told by Putin a while back that the Russian government funded Wagner, and they're the reason why Wagner had all their equipment. Wagner was forced to give their equipment back to Russia, and that was sort of the way that ended. Then we had, I believe, Peskov come out and say Wagner never existed, and we don't even know what Wagner even really is. And then they're trying to erase Wagner from history. And now we have this guy right here coming out saying that Wagner will cease to exist, meaning it's already existing and it's going to cease. And he says it's an illegal armed formation. So obviously Russia's all over the place. I'm not even sure if Russia's own people believe what they're saying at this point, because they're so bad at lying at this point, that this just basically is going to fall on deaf ears, and it's just another threat toward the Wagner to basically try to erase them from history completely and wipe them out. And taking out Prigozhin was the first big step to doing that and getting that done. And moving on to our next post here, we have one from Nexta. It says Ukraine may start using F-16 jets in the spring of 2024, and by this time, pilots, engineers, and technicians will be trained and the necessary infrastructure will be prepared, and this was stated by Alexei Reznikov, who is the Ministry of Defense. So, we see here that once again the F-16s are back on the radar for spring. We were thinking maybe they'd be in the summer, but we have gotten a lot of rumblings saying it'll be in the spring, and now Reznikov is confirming once again that is likely the case. Obviously, the training has to get done for the pilots, the engineers, and the technicians. Also, they have to get the infrastructure on the ground to support these aircraft to be able to maintain and repair them in case of damage, which I'm sure there will be some damage because these planes are going to get shot at, and it looks like it's going to be a lot sooner than expected. But moving on to our next post here, we have one from Nexta, and it is about security guarantees once again, and a quite interesting take by Zelensky on the plan of the West providing aid to the country. We see here that Zelensky says that Ukraine wants security guarantees from the USA similar to the Israeli ones, And this is something that a lot of analysts have talked about for many months now, is that the plan that basically the U.S. is taking at this point is similar to what we do to Israel. We don't really make the decisions for Israel or get involved militarily with their operations, but we do supply them with weaponry, technology, and we also help train them, and sometimes we do give outright money. It looks like Zelensky says he prefers that Israeli plan over a different type of plan. And he says here, with the United States, we will probably have exactly the Israeli model. And he says here that accordingly, in European states, they are supported by the parliaments of the states. And he's basically saying here that he prefers this Israeli plan. And I'm kind of somewhat surprised by that and somewhat not, because before we saw that Zelensky was asking the West to get involved, and now we're seeing that he prefers that the West take a more reserved approach. And I suspect that is because the West has been holding him back in striking the Russian mainland, and he's basically getting sick of that. And at this point, he wants the West to get uninvolved, but still supply the weaponry to help fight the war, which seems like a reasonable request, and I think we should accommodate that. And moving on to our next post here, we have one from Samuel Romani. It says, British intelligence believes that Russia has canceled the Zapad 2023 drills due to a lack of forces and equipment. And as I noted, this is a big reversal. The Zapad exercise in 2021 was Russia's largest since the Soviet collapse, and in 2023 it was supposed to be another spectacular drill, and they don't even have enough equipment to carry out the drill. All of their stuff is in Ukraine right now. As we saw during the Wagner coup, all that's really left inside of Russia to defend it is basically lightweight lightweight police equipment and SWAT equipment. Nothing major, nothing really strong in military, like you'd think would be in a drill. And we see here that they are simply not conducting the drill. So a big embarrassment to Russia, and I'm sure that is going to, piss Putin off in his own right. And moving on to our next one here, we have a post from Nexta. It says the armed forces of Ukraine have liberated Robotny, a Zaporizhia region, and are moving toward Novopropolska and this place right here, which I can't say, despite the fierce resistance of the enemy. And this was stated by the Deputy Defense Minister of Ukraine, Hannah Malar, and that's not supposed to be Anna right there, it's supposed to be Hannah. And this is very good news, by the way, as well. Good to see that they have liberated Robotny and these other places as well, and they're moving toward these places right here. And glad to see Ukraine is making progress and punching through those front lines. So much for the West saying that they weren't successful. It looks like we're having some success. And moving on to our next one here, we have one from Nexta as well. Nexta seems to be the poster of the day. And we see here, this is some disturbing news, by the way. In Germany, an official drew swastikas on cars with Ukrainian license plates. And in addition to the swastikas, a member of the city council wrote on the license plates, F Ukraine. So obviously not good whatsoever. Somebody in Germany has got some problems and apparently can't let go of the past, so they're drawing swastikas on cars. Now, one of the worst places you can see anything like those swastikas pop up is actually in Germany. That seems to be extra bad. And it says here that the politician was only fined for using symbols of unconstitutional organizations and insult. And if all that happened was he was fined, that seems like an injustice to me. This individual should not have a position. That's as plain and simple as it gets. If this person is supporting the Nazi regime by drawing swastikas and also saying F Ukraine, that person should not be in the government. Obviously, I'm from the U.S. and this is Germany, but I really doubt the Germans would want that either. But it appears that the administration has decided it's not good to remove them and they're only going to fine them. So quite interesting choice there, and it seems to be like a very bad choice. But moving on to our next post here, we have a post from us. It's at It's the Enforcer on Twitter. It says the Russian Ministry of Defense says it deployed 2 fighter jets to intercept a United States Air Force MQ-9 Reaper and RQ-4 Global Hawk unmanned aerial vehicles near the Crimean Peninsula, and the drones were detected by Russian forces that were monitoring equipment flying over the southwestern part of the Black Sea, said the Russian Defense Ministry. So once again, we see the U.S. is getting brave, and they're flying those drones back toward Crimea. A while back, they had said that they were going to try to fly away from Crimea because they were scared they would provoke the Russians. And now we see them sending in this big chunky drone right here, which is called a Global Hawk, to basically try to get radio intelligence on the ground as well as aerial surveillance. I like to see the U.S. being strong rather than weak, so I think this is a good thing to do. And even if it does provoke Russia to some extent, that's simply a risk of what we're doing here whatsoever. So we can't be scared if Russia is going to be a bully again. We just have to simply deal with it when it pops up, and we can't be basically cowering in a corner at Russia's will. That's wrong, in my opinion. But moving on to our next post here, we have one from Flash News Ukraine. It says there is now no need to announce a new mobilization to increase the number of troops, says Alexei Reznikov, and the mobilization plan approved by the Rada has not been fulfilled yet, and we still have the resource. And obviously, it's always a preference to not mobilize people, which basically means people are being compelled to fight, and instead they're relying on volunteer forces and also relying on the current forces they already have, meaning they haven't lost as nearly as many troops as the Russians have, and they have basically had a lot more other soldiers living on through the battles, which is a very good thing and very positive. And we see here that mobilization is still a resource, but it's not being invoked yet. So I think that's a very good thing as well, and I'm glad to hear that they're not having to resort back to mobilization. And with that, that is our last piece of news for the day. Not a ton of big news coming out today, but obviously still significant in its own right. And also, I hope you found the video informative. If you want to, go peep our Twitter page. It's at It's the Enforcer on Twitter. We also have a Patreon page where you can support us as well over there. The link is in the description below for Patreon. And also, please be sure to join us tomorrow, Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern. We'll be running our nightly war stream then as well and covering all the events that happen from now until then on that stream. So I hope it's been informative once again. Thank you for watching, and bye-bye for now.